Hello, this is George Demaree, and here we are with Money Matters again, along with my co-host, Ivy Brito. Say hello, Ivy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Money Matters Show. We're going to have some great stuff for you today.
Yeah, we are. We're going to talk about interest rates, credit cards, credit rating. We just want you to be more financial literate. Remember, in financial literacy is the ability to understand and properly apply financial management skills to effectively plan and manage debt, to calculate interest. We want to make sure you understand how interest is calculated. That financial illiteracy contributes to people making poor financial decisions and becoming victims of abusive financial practices. Remember, practically every major decision that's made in most businesses or even in your personal life has money is involved. On the way here today, I was listening to the OJs.
All right.
Money, 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 you know. Some
Yeah.
people got to have it. Some people really need it. Some people do bad things and some people do good. So we're going to talk about what you do to do good. Anything else, Ivy?
No, I'm ready to go. And we're going to talk about credit today. We gave you some homework last week. Actually, before we get into that, do you
Yes.
want to kind of do a
Yeah,
recap?
we're going to do a quick recap of last week. I did some research. I called a number of major credit card providers, called Citi, Chase, Discover, PNC, and this is what I asked. What happens when people have lost their job during this pandemic, and how do you handle that? I also called a few mortgage providers as well, and they said what they're allowing you to do is pretty much, for lack of finding a better word, furlough the next 3 months. That's 90 days, where not only do you not make payments, but they're not going to charge you any interest over those 90 days. Now, the key to that is you just can't expect them to do it if you don't make a phone call.
Right. We talked about being proactive last week. So you don't sit there and suffer in silence. Pick up the phone. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Don't procrastinate. Call them because they have accommodations for you.
They will help you. They will help you. Just want you. So the first thing we're going to do is,
Sorry.
there you go.
I'm
First,
sorry.
the first thing you're going to do. This is our second one. We're going to do better. And,
We'll get there.
and every week's going to do. Every week's going to be a better week. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about a little bit is about interest rates. And according to Investopedia, interest is the charge for the privilege of borrowing money. Now think about that. That borrowing money, they look at it as a privilege. It's certainly not a right. And all interest is not made equal. A 10% interest rate is different depending on how that interest rate is computed. Now there are a number of ways that people compute interest rates. One is called a simple interest rate. That's if you borrow $100 at 10%, you owe 110. The other is a compound interest rate. And most credit card companies use a compound interest rate. By the way, they do that. That's interest on top of interest. We're going to spend some time on that, on how credit card companies make money if you don't pay if you only pay a minimum payment. The other way is amortized, where you pay a higher percent of your interest early in the term of your contract, and a lower part of your principal meaning the amount of money that you actually borrowed. And as time goes on, your interest on that goes down. The next is fixed, variable, prime, and discount. Most of the time, prime and discount is a business-to-business kind of thing. Most issuers of credit cards, as I said before, use a compound interest rate. Let me share this. Never only pay, if you can help it, never only pay minimum interest on a credit card, Ivy.
Why do you say that?
Because let me share this with you. Usually, the minimum payment that you have is between 3 and 4% of the principal. For an example, if you borrow $5,000 and you owe $5,000 in credit card debt, now And the average American right now has between $6,000 and $8,000 in credit card debt, so you may fall in that category. If you only pay the minimum payment over the lifetime of that loan, it will take you 11 years and 5 months to pay it off.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because now, by law, the credit card statements, if you have a credit card and you pick up that statement, it will have on there, if you pay the minimum amount, it will take X number of years to pay it off. If you pay a higher amount, it then tells you how many years you have to pay that off. So they're trying to teach us the value of paying more than the minimum rate. So if you got a credit card statement, hopefully you're opening those and looking at those. Take a look at that section. It's on every credit card statement now.
It is. And again, a minimum payment is on the low end 2% of a principal, and at the high end 4% of a principal. And the reason that it takes so long is that, again, 4% of $5,000 is $200. If you paid it down to $2,500, now your minimum payment is only $100. That's the reason it takes so long to pay it off. Now, watch this. If you paid the whole $200 during the life of the program, you would pay that off in 32 months as opposed to paying it off in 11 years and 5 months. Understand what credit card companies are doing. They are in the business of making money. If you don't pay your payment on time, they don't mind. Those big companies are billion-dollar companies. If you're a person who decides to not make a payment, they're going to get their money one way or another. And what's going to happen is it's going to diminish that privilege of being able to borrow money.
And that's going to impact, all of that impacts your credit score. And so we're going to talk a little bit more. Do you want me to get into that now, George, or do you want to make a few more points before we delve there?
Before we go there, let's just talk about these are the big investments people make. They make big investments in their home,
right,
and their car.
Yep.
So let's just take a little time to make a deep dive into what happens when you have good credit as compared to bad credit, which will be a good segue on how credit is computed.
Show me what you got.
I'm going to share what I have. If the average cost of a car, according to every source I've looked at, in 2019 was about $20,000. If you could borrow that money and you had good credit, and that good credit number, we're going to share with you what that is. Anything really above 700 is considered to be good credit. Anything over 750 is considered to be really good credit, and anything above that is great credit. But if you have good credit, probably the most you're going to pay for that money is around 4%. Well, the cost per month on a 60-month loan is about $370. Now, if your credit is not nearly as good, right, and you have a credit number between 600 and 690, that 4% interest rate on an average goes up to 11%. That makes your payment closer to $495 over a 60-month period, and that's going to cost you another over $7,000 for the purchase of that car. Now remember this, before we hit the other direction. When you buy a car, you're not, unless you're paying cash, there's two ways to buy a car, Ivy.
Not many people do the cash route.
If you got the check, you can write it and you walk it out the door. The other is the great majority of the people are financing the car. Remember this, you do not own that car. You at best have a co-ownership with the lender who lent you money. So when you're buying a car, you're not really buying a car, though you are. You're really buying the cash to purchase the car. And how much are you willing to pay for that cash? If you don't think that's true, miss 3 payments and the true owner of that car will come and pick it up.
They sure will.
So I told my son just bought a car recently, just bought a truck. And I said, George, go and get your money first. Negotiate your interest rate up front. Go to your lender do you have a relationship with tell them what you want, and you get the cash. Once that's done, it's going to be much easier for you to go to a dealership or go to a person to negotiate to buy that vehicle. He had X amount of dollars. He went in the door. He said, that's all I have. This is what I want. And considering the economic position of people in today, he walked out 2 weeks ago with a new truck.
Gives you options.
Get good
And you can
credit.
only do that if you have good credit.
You can
Gives you
only
options.
do that. So, Ivy, let's talk about good credit. What does a credit rating look like, and what's good compared to bad?
Okay. Well, I like your intro and what you said. It's really a great segue because credit demonstrates to that lender your history of paying that money back. So having good credit gives you more options to purchase those things. So what I want to talk about is last week we encouraged you to go to annualcreditreport.com and get your credit report so that you know what's on there. You can't fix what you don't know is broken. And so the credit report, and I went online, there's 3 credit bureaus, and I got my credit report from TransUnion. There's 3. I think
It's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian.
Yep.
Those are the 3.
So one of the things that because you get 1 free credit report per year from all 3, you can either get all 3 at one time. So if you're buying something like a home and you want to make sure that everything on your credit report is tight and sufficient and up to date, then you might want to get all 3 at once. But if you kind of want to monitor your credit report throughout the year, maybe you might want to get 1 every quarter. But at any rate, I went on to annualcreditreport.com, and I've had a credit history for over 20 years. So my report is fairly thick. So depending upon, like your son who's 30,
Yeah, it's 30.
he might just have a few pages of the credit
just
report.
had a new daughter 2 days ago, so I was a new
Congratulations.
grandfather. Hello to little Jordan. Could not say that.
Awesome.
You know,
On your credit report, they do a really deep, we talk about deep, we use that phrase deep dive a lot. They have here every address that I've lived on this credit report. They have every job, even my college intern job is on here.
wow.
So your credit report is really looking at every aspect of your background. Then it's going to have a little chart on here, and we don't have a way to show it on the screen, but it's going to look at each credit line that you took advantage of, and it's going to have a green light if you've paid everything on time. It'll have, if it's 30 days late, you're going to have a yellow light. If it's 60 days late or 90 days late, it gives you more of a red light. So that's just a quick look, because they're going to look at the past 24 months to see, are you paying your bills on time? And that's what the credit lenders are looking for when they look at your credit score, because if they're going to lend you money to buy a car, or if they're going to lend you money to buy a house, they want to know, is this person reliable? So hopefully you've got a lot of green marks on your credit report. And if you don't, that's where you need to start to clean up your credit before you buy a house or before you buy a car. So what are some of the things that are on my credit report? How can I clean it up, George?
Well, first of all, let me share with you the factors involved in coming up with that credit number. Credit history, as Ivy said, is the most important. 35% of your credit number comes because of your credit history. Are you making your payments on time? Frankly,
Right.
if I could just be so blunt about it, are you a person that will keep their word? If you're a person that will say, I will do this, do not buy anything on credit that's going to push you in order to make your payments on time. Buy a car for $15,000 if a $20,000 payment on a car is going to put you in a bad position. because your payment history is most important. Number 2 is called credit utilization. How much of your available credit are you using? For an example, if you have simplify the math, if you have $100,000 worth of credit available to you, what percentage of that are you actually utilizing? Now, the number that you want to stay under is 30%.
Absolutely.
But the best you could be, I mean, the goal is to keep it under 10%. So if you have $100,000 in credit, then ideally you want to have less than $1,000 that you have outstanding.
And let me tell you why that's important, because the scenario that I give a lot is I don't use $100,000 limit. I use more like 10, but he's a big baller. So, but anyway, so let's say that we both have $100,000 credit limit, and I have utilized $90,000 of mine, and George has utilized $10,000 of his. Even though we both pay on time, I pay just like you on time.
Actually, that's $10,000, not $1,000.
But to check my math, a creditor that's looking at both of us, they're looking at me like, oh, she's living on the edge. She got about this much credit available. So, and he has about this much credit available. Who would you rather lend money to?
And let me clarify the math. 10% of 100,000 is $10,000. So you want to keep it under 10. I like to keep it under 1, and that's why $1,000 was on my mind, because you want to show folks that you can borrow, but that you're a good steward of the credit that you have available. The other way that credit is calculated is the age of the credit, your age of how long you've had credit. So they actually see, well, they've had this credit card since 2000 or 2010. They want to see how long you've had credit and how long you've made your payments on time. Right. 15% of your credit number is based on your age or your credit.
So the young people, there's not a whole lot you can do about that piece because you're just starting out. So you don't have as much control over that piece of it versus George and I. You know, I got a Sears credit card in college. Remember they used to be on campus?
Wow.
I've had that credit line open, and let's talk about that a little bit, for 25 years. So that's a green light in my book. But if you've only had a credit card, if you're 30 years old and you've had one for 5 years, you know, you have to build that particular area of your credit up.
That's why it's important. One of the things that's important is that it's good to have as much credit available. And though I have a number of credit cards, I really refuse to cancel the credit cards.
Right, don't close them.
Don't close them.
Why not? Closing
credit cards, first of all, it affects the percentage on that credit utilization form.
Right.
For an example, if I had, let's get back to the right math, if I had $100,000 worth of credit, but yet I was only $10,000 or less as far as utilizing that credit, but I had a card that had a $10,000 limit. Now my credit is $90,000, and now that percentage is higher. So you don't want to do anything that will affect that number. So they look at that I don't know why really, but they look at it in a negative way.
So George, how many credit cards should I have? You said you have a lot. Some people say you only need one. How do I decide?
I think it depends on the individual. I've had them for a long time. You know, I have, personally, I have a Citi, a Chase, I have a few credit, Discover, but I only use one. And the one that I use gives me the most benefit. First of all, it's the one with the lowest interest rate, though I do pay them off every month, because when you pay them off every month, you pay no interest, all right? But I like to keep it because I want to have the credit available. So I have maybe 4 or 5, maybe even 6 credit cards, and every now and then I'll use one, even if only $100, just to keep it current, pay it off that day. Now, a lot of folks I've told only have one and only use it as an emergency. It's a difference between needs and wants. Trust me, there will be a need. There was a day that we came home a number of years ago. My wife and I, we were in Florida on vacation. We walked in the house in July, and let me tell you what, it was 100 degrees in our house because that air conditioning unit went out. So there had to be one or two things. Either we had the money saved to be able to pay to get it done, or have a good enough credit card that we can get it done that day. So.
Yeah. The other thing I tell people when they ask me, because I get asked that question a lot too.
Yeah, that's a tough question.
It depends on how disciplined you are. So if you're a credit card swiper and if you love those department store credit cards, and you don't have the discipline to not use it, then you just need 1 or 2 credit cards.
I agree with that.
Because you're going to get yourself into a deep, dark hole. And while we're talking about it, store credit cards like the Macy's and the Dillard's, their interest rate is high versus a Visa card where the interest rate you might be paying 9 or 10%. And if you're going to get multiple Visa cards, you need to shop the interest rates.
Shop
you can Google
interest
those.
rates and shop value. Some give points. Well, for an example, the credit card that we use because we know we're going to get points at the end of the month or the end of the year.
Right.
So if you can use a credit card, so there are advantages from using credit cards.
But you have to be disciplined.
But you got to use them and not let them use you.
Right. That's where remember last week we talked about mindset and changing your behavior. If you know you can't do it, then just don't apply for it.
And as Ivy said, retailers have higher interest rates than most anybody else other than pay here loan folks.
And they are some of the best salespeople when it comes to credit cards. Because every time you check out, what do they take?
Well,
you want to put that on your Macy's?
It happened this week. I can give you a real life example. I needed a lawnmower. So I go to Home Depot, did all my research, making sure I'm doing the right thing. Okay, all right, going to go to Home Depot to buy a lawnmower. I go out and the lady at checkout says, do you have a credit card? I said, no. Well, if you apply for a credit card, we can take $50 off this price. Well, I'm thinking that's worth a couple of minutes, you know? So she goes, she gets it, she gets my number, and in about 3 to 5 minutes, I get a lawnmower that was priced at $300 for $250. Well, I was about to pay cash for it anyway. Now I get it because I have good credit. Now let me tell you what happens. Don't only do it if you know you're going to pay that off during that cycle. If not, then you pay a 25% interest on the $250 that you borrowed, and the money that you earned or saved goes right out the door.
That's how those stores get you sucked into those credit cards. So again, if you can't resist and you know you're not going to pay it off,
don't go through Von Mar if you can't pay it off. don't
do it.
I mean,
don't do it.
There have been times I've seen a suit and I said, oh, wow. Do I need it? The difference between needs and wants. Another way credit is computed is your credit mix.
Tell me more.
Well, credit mix is credit cards, your mortgage payment, your auto payment, different ways, different companies who have extended credit to you. They like to see that a lot of different kinds of folks, or a lot of different people has extended you credit. That will help your overall number. If you want a great number, have a few of those. And last but not least is credit inquiries. Your credit will be deemed. Now there are soft inquiries.
Right.
And there are hard inquiries.
What's the difference?
There's a difference. A soft inquiry, if you wanted to check your own credit, it's not going to affect you. Trust me. As I said last week, I use Credit Karma, and I check my credit all the time, you know. Another soft, if an employer, If an employer is checking your credit, that's a soft inquiry. If you have a company that you've already done business with and they're rechecking your credit, that's also a soft inquiry that will not affect your number. But when I bought that lawnmower 2 days ago, and that's a hard inquiry because I had not had credit with Home Depot, it affected my number by 2 points on 2 weeks.
Got you upset.
I mean, 2 points. You know, a person who has good, exceptional credit, it went down by 2 points just because of that. Anytime, if you're going to buy a car, when you're ready to buy a car, don't go to multiple people to look for the right number. Kind of do your research in advance.
Well, let me talk a little bit about that, because that's one of the things that I wanted to do was talk
Please.
about the different places that impact your credit score. So when you are buying a car, the car dealer has a relationship with multiple banks. So they're going to search let's say they have a relationship with 10 financial institutions. When you look on your credit report, you're going to see an inquiry from 10 financial institutions. However, the credit card companies know that if they see a large number of inquiries within a 14 to 30-day period, they know that you're probably shopping for a car. So it's not going to impact it as much. But if they see an inquiry from Home Depot, and then they see one from Macy's, and then they see one from your mortgage company, and then they see one from the furniture store, then that raises a red flag to them, because it may appear that you're overextending yourself if you get approved for all of these. So that's what hurts your credit, is when they see multiple companies.
That opens another thing that I want to share with our audience today. There are a number of companies, furniture companies, window companies, all kind of companies that will say 12 months same as cash, 24 months same as cash. Come in and get it now. You don't have to pay any interest on it for 24 months. If you do not, you got to watch the terms on that. If you do not pay that by the if it's 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, or some as many as 5 years.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
And on the 25th month, on the next month, all that interest that was accrued, you owe.
Yeah, it can come back to really bite you.
It can come back. So if you owe $1,000 and you got a year to pay that $1,000, then you budget. This is what I would do. I would budget $100 a month, at the least, in order for me to get that paid off before the last 2 months at the end of that term.
You know, when you take that out, if you can budget $100 a month or not. And if you honestly know that you can't do that, don't do it. Because a lot of people, it sounds good. Oh, I could do that in a year. I got a whole year, but stuff happens, emergencies happen. So you just have to be really, really careful. Some other things, you mentioned a soft hit. So some other things that look at your credit score is auto insurance. You all know I work for State Farm. There's a big controversy about this, but the fact of the matter is, insurance companies look at your credit score to help determine the risk when it comes to filing a claim. So it is a soft hit, but it is a hit. So the higher your credit score, the lower your premium. It's not the only factor that they use, but it is a factor. So if you're wondering why your insurance rates are high, one of the things you might want to look at is, what's my credit score? And so you can control your rates by your credit score.
If you don't get anything, hoping you're getting a lot from us, because we got a lot of things we're going to go over the next few weeks. But paying your bills on time is the most important thing you can do.
Absolutely.
And if you have a problem, there are problems. They come up. Get on the telephone, talk to your creditors. Not all, but most of them will allow you some leverage, some leeway. that will not affect your score. Another thing that can affect your credit score, I didn't even think about this until sitting here, is doctors and hospital bills.
Oh, medical bills.
Medical bills. Let me tell you what a hospital really wants. They just want their money, period. You, for most of those people, you can set the terms. If you owe $1,000, I'm just going to use as example, and you get a bill and they say we want this paid by next month, get on the phone, tell them, well, I can pay $25 a month.
They'll take it.
Trust me. Now, the key is that you keep your word.
Absolutely.
But if you tell them that you can, even if it's over years, if you tell them that you can pay $25 a month, because there are so many people who default on money owed on medical bills, if they can get a payment every month, no matter what it is, they'll take it. The key again, Ivy, in audience, is being proactive.
Absolutely.
Do not be, and let me share something else. All this information that we have, I found it.
I found it. It's out there. I told you last week, you got to read, if it's a magazine, if it's a podcast, if it's a book, it's everywhere.
I mean, even things that I thought were true prior to us doing this series, I said, oh my, I didn't realize that. You know, there's a lot of things out there. And when you know things, there is no substitute for information. One of the things, I'm going to go and say this, one of the many, many things that makes our pastor so powerful is because he has an insatiable appetite for information. He studies all the time. He makes sure that what he gives his congregation every Sunday is accurate information, and he's done his homework.
And you know what else he says? He said this back when I joined in the 80s. Don't just believe what I say. Go seek it out for yourself.
He said, he still says that today.
Yeah. Read it
he
for
said,
yourself.
don't believe me, read it. What he wants you to do is he wants you to be able to take care of yourself, to be self-sufficient, to understand. Don't believe what people tell you. Remember, every major decision, I don't care if it's your employer, government, there's a dollar sign attached to that somewhere.
Learners are earners, is what I always say. Employers are going to look at that too. They look at your credit score because they want to know, are you going to make good, sound financial decisions if you work for me? I
hired people for 30 years, and I looked at their credit score was something that I looked at. How am I going to allow you to handle money at a multi-million-dollar radio stations if you couldn't handle your own money?
Your money, yeah. It's so important. I don't know how much time we have left,
but I'm going to just be, I'm going to be
10 minutes.
All right,
okay, well, good. We got a little more time.
Real quick, how to improve your credit. Things to do to improve your credit number. First of all, as Ivy said, check your number.
Because you got to know it if you're going to fix it.
And every now and then, you may see something on your report that's not right.
That's why you need to get that report. You get a free one.
You can call a creditor and say, well, no, I made that payment on time, yet you ding me on my credit report. It's no substitute for information. Set up a system for bill paying. You shared that.
We talked about it. You got to get organized and know where your bills are so that when it comes time to pay them, none of them fall through the cracks. So George uses a bin. I use an accordion folder. It doesn't matter what you use, just make sure that you have an organizational system in place.
Had to. Because there's so much mail that comes in the house that every now and then we have and I have a tendency sometimes to be called, if you look it up, a stack-a-maniac, all right? Where I'll just stack them up. And I think, oh man, so I had to come up with a better system, because the last thing you want to do is to be a day late and they want to charge you, even though if you're a day late, it won't affect your number, but they will charge you a fee.
Now, let me tell you a secret on that. You can't abuse it, but if you, and I know by experience, I'm human. If you get a late fee, and those late fees are $35, $39.
They are.
call the credit company and ask them to waive the fee. They will do it for you one time. If you have a reasonable excuse, they will waive that fee for you one time. So again, that's where that proactiveness comes in and being knowledgeable about how to handle your finances.
It's happened to me. I mean, over the years, from one reason or another. I mean, a bill falls in a stack. I get a new bill. Say, "Well, I didn't pay that." So you call in most banks. I've called them and I got good history with them. They said, "No, we will take that off of there." But I had one bank just recently that didn't. So
Uh-oh.
needlessly, and I'm not going to mention it on. I really want to, but I'm not. All right. And I had that credit card for 20 years. Had never been late. And my wife and I went out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Had my sons to pick up my mail, and it just fell through the crack, and I
Cracks.
didn't pay them on time.
It
So
happens.
anyway, it happened.
One of the things too that people ask me, I want to touch on it a little bit. I don't have a whole lot of information, but they say, what about these credit repair companies? Should I go to a credit repair company that promises to fix my credit for me? There's only certain things that they can fix. And I don't really have a
have an answer for that.
opinion one way or the other, but I can tell you that many of the things that they do, you can do on your own. The credit repair companies do charge you a fee. So think about, should I use that fee to pay down my debt? And can I get on the phone and call some creditors? But if you don't have the discipline to do it and you need some assistance, all I can encourage you to do is do your homework on those credit repair companies. Some of them are legit, but some of them are not.
Again, pay your bills on time, set up a system, understand credit utilization, understand it, try to keep your line of credit or how much you using under 30%,
Mm-hmm.
ideally 10%, limit your request, and if you happen to have thin credit, they say 62 million Americans have thin credit.
What do you mean by thin credit?
They just don't have enough credit. They have not been out around long enough or had asked for credit very often.
So if I don't have a lot of credit, because I get that sometimes too, how do I build it?
Well, sometimes you can go to those retailers that we talked about, and get a credit card. Sometimes you got to take out a loan, but make sure that if you take out the loan, that is a loan that you can pay back quickly. It's there was a how to overcome. Sometimes you can use your utility bills.
Sometimes you can, because
can-
they have a record
Yes.
of your payments on
So
time.
so you can say, hey, I've paid my utility bill. Sometimes if you're renting, you can the person that you're renting to, they can give you a document saying. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But again, if you take credit at any retailer, usually those interest
The
rates.
fees are high.
If
If you can get a major credit card, a Visa, a MasterCard, a Discover card from your bank, they will give you a secured credit card as well. So I guess the first place I might want to go is
would you
to
go?
my lender, because they can offer you a secured credit card. At State Farm, we had a credit builder credit card that's going away here soon, but that was specifically for people who did not have enough credit established. It had very low balance, and it helped you to build your credit. So talk to your bank, your lender first, and then seek out maybe one store credit card if you have the discipline to use it and pay it properly.
Pay it if you can pay it off every month. Things, as a rule, unless it's an emergency, do not use a credit card unless you can pay it off before the end of that 30-day term. Number one, it will help your credit. All right. Last, one more time, you take control of your financial situation. This is about becoming financial literate. And we have a history of a people just because some of the things that I'm doing and have done and had the resources to do, my great grandfather and grandfather couldn't do. So this kind of information I had to find on my own. My children will not need to have that because now they have me. So we want you, we really want all of our viewers, we want our members and people not our members to understand the true value of money, and that when you're asking for credit, and what you're asking for is how much you're really willing to pay for cash.
And teach, I'm glad you mentioned that, teach your children. The school system is getting a little bit better, but it's up to us to teach our children how to manage money. You should be an example of that. Sit down with your kids and show them the utility bills so they can get a reality check. Show them what the LG&E bill is. Show them what the water bill is. Show if you have an auto loan, show them what it is. Teach your children, but first you have to learn and understand for yourself. But teaching your children is the best way that we can end this cycle of financial illiteracy.
And give back. When you've been blessed and you know how to handle it, it gives you an opportunity to bless somebody else. So you will reap a return by helping someone else who needs your help. That is a big reason that Ivy and I are sitting here, because we want to give back, because we've been fortunate enough to be blessed so much. According to Ralph Waldo Emerson, money often costs too much. You got to know the difference.
Absolutely.
An 18% interest rate, there's so much, I could have taken a much star in what that means. For an example, if you get a payoff today, how that money is going to be different, a payoff tomorrow, because the APR becomes a DPR, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're getting a little bit deep on me, George.
So maybe
getting a little bit deep.
Maybe in weeks to come, because interest is amortized and compounded daily. If it's a 24% interest rate, and the APR is 24% over a year, that's basically 2% a month, but it's done by day because months have some months have 30 days, some months have 31 days. So it's pretty deep on how you do it. Didn't want to get there, but there's a way that they're making money off of you guys. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. We got a lot of good topics coming up in the next few weeks, so we hope that you stay tuned.
Yep, we want to talk about investing.
We want to talk about life insurance.
Life insurance. I want to talk about Social Security.
Social Security, absolutely. Medicare,
yeah,
another good topic.
What do you do at 62? Do you take it or you wait to 66? You know, so those.
We'll get some specialists on here to talk about that. And
yeah. So that's where we are.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our viewers want to talk about auto insurance next week.
Auto insurance. Okay.
Oh, wow, we can do that. That's on you.
All right.
How'd it go?